So hello and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be showing you the kind of routine I do every sort of 6 to 9 months really on my engine bay. And it's not a sort of full detail of it. The people who are going to go to a lot sort of greater lengths to clean their engine bay than I will in this video. Nor is it a sort of how-to. A lot of people won't use the waterless technique. This is just generally the technique I prefer to use. It's quick, it doesn't use a lot of chemicals or a lot of products and tools either. So as you can see, the kind of state of the engine bay we're dealing with now. Now it has been probably around 8 months since I last cleaned it. Not absolutely horrendous, but there's definitely quite a bit of sand in there, a lot of dust, a bit of dirt. Not looking too good, but not horrendous either. So I'm just going to be showing you step by step what I did to tackle it and get it up back to scratch again, so it wasn't an embarrassment when I took it to get serviced. So here you can see the products that I used in this demonstration. So a few microfiber towels. I've got a very large brush that's actually used for wheel arches but works perfectly for this as it's really soft and allows me to get into difficult to reach areas. Got a hog's hair brush, again soft, pretty versatile for working in that product. I've also got an exterior brush that's a little bit stiffer for situations where I need a little bit more agitation. And I've also just using 2 chemicals here, keeping it quite sort of straightforward really. So the first one I've got is Surfex HD, which are diluted to 10%, and the second one is the Tyre and Trim Dressing by Squid Ink Detailing. So starting off with the underside of the bonnet, I was just using that Surfex HD at 10% just to clean up the areas with my microfiber towel. I have quite a few microfiber towels for this sort of situation, and the sort of keen-eyed people will notice that I am not wearing gloves at this stage, and that is bad. I actually just didn't wear them for the first couple of clips. I was touching the dry microfiber at this point, I wasn't getting any chemicals on my hands, but luckily I did remember pretty quick after starting. Always kind of wear gloves, good PPE in these situations. It is just best to keep your hands from drying out and keep your skin protected, but also you're going to get your hands pretty filthy if you're cleaning an engine bay without any gloves on either. So once I'd cleaned the underside of the bonnet, I moved on to using a brush on sort of the trim areas. So I found that this hog's hair brush was really useful just to work in the products a little bit more than the microfiber towel could, and also to get into those sort of more difficult to reach areas. As you can see throughout most of the video, I will be spraying the products directly onto either the cloth or the brushes, just because I don't really want any overspray. You can kind of get the product quite easily into places you don't want it to, so I find that spraying it directly onto the tools I'm using is sort of a safer method. So I kind of like to work from the outside in, which I'm not really sure is the kind of correct approach, it's just the one that I generally prefer. So once I'd dealt with all the seals, moved on to the front of the bonnet. And this is an area where quite a lot of grime can build up around the headlights and around the trim here. So again, using a combination of these brushes and also of the microfiber towel, just using a damp one to essentially mop up that product. A Surfex HD at 10% can leave a slight residue that I didn't really want sitting on there, so a damp microfiber I found was really useful just to make sure none of that residue was sticking around. Just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying today's video, it would be brilliant if you could give it a like. It really helps to support the channel and to get the video out there to more people. So I do really like this all-purpose cleaner. It's one of my favourite ones to use on pretty much every area of the car. You can of course dilute it to different concentrations. If you are dealing with a particularly dirty engine bay, then you might want to up it a little bit, maybe go towards 20%. You could even dial it back slightly. I find that 10% is a sort of happy medium to go for. So I also dried off the brush and also really wanted to kind of get into these areas where a lot of the sand had built up. So the good thing about this brush is it doesn't just fling the sand everywhere, it does kind of collect it. Of course a little bit is going to go into the lower sections. As I said, I'm not completely detailing the engine bay. It's not a massive concern for me, I just want it to get into kind of respectable state. I did have the microfiber on hand as well to mop up any areas where it was a more appropriate solution to dealing with this dust. You can see here a little bit that the horsehair brush doesn't get everywhere. It's quite a short brush, so it doesn't have too much reach. So I also had that quite large wheel arch brush, which I used just to get to the areas where I really couldn't reach myself. So being really gentle here, but luckily this brush is very soft. It's sort of got feathered kind of bristles, so just being very light with it, making sure I wasn't knocking anything, but it did allow me to get into some of these more difficult to reach areas and give them a proper clean. So once I'd sort of got rid of the bulk of the dust and sand, what I did then was just went in again with my damp microfiber and my Surf X HD on the brush and just give everything that was more accessible a little bit of a clean. So being very careful around any kind of electrical components, around the battery. I didn't use any sort of water at all. I just essentially used kind of dry brushes just to really agitate them to the point where I was happy with the level of clean that they actually were. But on the areas where there was plastic casing, I could go in with that all-purpose cleaner and the damp microfiber towel just to give them a more thorough clean. So as you can see, the plastics came up pretty nicely. I did dress them later on just to give them sort of a little bit of protection, I guess, but just generally to finish off the job. I had time, so I thought I might as well, but to be honest, at this stage I was pretty happy with the level of clean. Once I'd given them a little bit of a wipe with a very lightly damp microfiber towel, again, not really saturating anything here, keeping everything quite dry. You know, it doesn't help as much with the lubrication, and it would be easier if I used more products, but it does risk it getting into areas where I don't really want it to. So just taking my time with it here. You know, lubrication is more important when you're dealing with things like paintwork, but on the engine bay, you know, you're not scratching and swirling that area, so it's not as much of a concern if I don't use as much lubrication as I probably would want to make it a little bit easier. So once I'd gone and cleaned all the areas with the all-purpose cleaner, I then went in with the dressing on the black plastic casings and on some of the trim. So using that Squid Ink tyre and trim dressing, now the reason I chose that one is because it's probably the most matte one I have. It leaves a really nice finish on these kind of plastics. I didn't want anything that was greasy to use or anything that, you know, if I missed a spot, because, you know, I can't get to every single area of this, I didn't want it to look really obvious. So I find that using something that's kind of a barely there finish does complete the look, but isn't a disaster again if you don't get complete coverage. So I sprayed it onto the cloth to get into most of the areas. On the trim around the outside, I just sprayed it directly onto the plastics and gave it quite a liberal coating, as these areas do tend to get quite dirty, so I'd rather they had the most protection, and again, you don't really have to risk overspray in these situations. So here you can see the finished shots of the engine bay. So I'm going to do some sort of before and after comparisons going around each area. If you have enjoyed this video, it'd be brilliant if you could give it a like. Comment down below if you've got any questions about the process or the products that I've used. And if you aren't subscribed already, then it'd be great if you could do that too. We've got videos coming out all the time on different products and cleaning different cars. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.